How's it going, everyone? First video in a little while. I am just going to be talking about a couple of different scenarios for the market and a couple of picks that I am eyeing in each scenario. I wanted to make this video because someone in the one option chat said, hey, I'd appreciate a video on this. And I was like, yeah, why not? It's been a little while. I will still be doing a quarterly update video just on how my progress is going, the trades I've made, what I've learned, etc., etc. But for right now, just doing a video on this moment in SPY, which is a bit of a juncture. So let's talk about what we have here. Let's kind of start with this bull trend, right? We had this nice little bull trend going up, and then boom, long red candle. Super heavy volume, and that was a signal of at least the kind of the end of the bull trend is what it usually signals here. We got another little pop up, got smacked down, tested this low which held in the 100-day SMA, and we kind of rallied up over here, smacked down, rallied up, smacked down, and then we just started to flatten out. So we flattened out around 680, almost got to 700, not quite. And this is just many months of choppy, dull price action after a much more orderly uptrend. So this didn't signal a bearish reversal that was strong, but it signaled that we entered something that was much choppier, and then we started to flatten out. So we're flattening out here, and this right over here over the weekend, here was the news of the Iran war. So you can see that the market was kind of chopping around here. Here's the time of the war breaking down. Because the market has been so flat, all these moving averages have had time to catch up and really flatten out. So this break or this test of the 100-day SMA is not as meaningful as a test here because it didn't have to drop as far. So we kind of chopped around through here, broke it, came back up, broke it again, tested it. And we started to spend more and more time below the 8 and the 15 EMAs. You can see that we got this flip here in the middle of, pretty much the middle of February, and we only had, this is really one clear day above it. A couple of days were one more day above it here, and then we kind of just have been below this point the entire time, kind of in this bearish channel. And then this week, the pressure accelerated as we tested the 200 SMA on Thursday, and then we broke down below it with some gusto on Friday. So this is our first test of the 200 SMA all the way back since May of last year after we're recovering from that tariff drop. So fairly significant. The other significant level is this horizontal resistance that's coming around here. Now, I did remove a couple of the drawings, so I'm going to unhide those here, but these gray lines are just some horizontal levels on like kind of some high volume levels here, and these sort of pink lines are some high volume AVWAPs that have come into play. This was the previous earnings AVWAP, and some of these won't be as relevant that I'll be, taking out. But one thing that I did draw was this thick purple AVWAP, which is from the tariff candle right here from 4/9/2025. So dropped that over there as we were coming down just to see what would happen. You can see that we came up, hit this level here. We actually did bounce above it. Now, is that going to be super strong? Is that going to hold? I don't know, but that's just some level of resistance below the 200 that we can lean on. And then besides that, there's not too much. I have this AVWAP, which is coming all the way from the yen carry trade drop in 2024. I don't know how significant that is going to be. That had a little bit of significance at that time. Some support over here, and then we cracked through that pretty thoroughly over here. So that might matter. That kind of lines up with some horizontal resistance that we have over here around 610 or so. So to me, there's one at 620 maybe. There's some support here, some at 610. So that's kind of the landscape going down. On the way up, we want to just see if this is going to be a break and a snapback through the SMA. If we're going to break through the SMA, retest it, and then continue downwards, or if we're going to maybe break the SMA and maybe we'll chop around here for a little bit as the market decides well, our buyer's going to step in here? Or do sellers feel like there's still impetus to get out of positions right now? So we're going to have to wait and see. Now, the way I think about the market is pretty similar to what Pete thinks. There's like a long-term fundamental, a long-term technical, a short-term technical, and then if you're day trading, you can look at the M5 bias. But that's always the last part. For the fundamentals, I don't spend too much time on it. I think it's just important for most traders just to know some general themes, right? So you should know, hey, okay, what's the real GDP growth? What's inflation looking like? What's employment looking like? And what's the Fed rate? And what's the position? Those are some pretty basic factors. So as the last thing I saw here, real GDP growth, the year over year is 2%, which is pretty much in line with what we want. CPI 2.4% was a Feb number. Unemployment at 4.4%. You could argue that there's some maybe hard to trust issues at the BLS given all the revisions, but that's just the latest number. Current Fed rate is in that 3.75 range, and there's one cut planned this year. That one cut is subject to change given, inflation concerns. If we have a recession, which I'm not predicting, but I'm saying that if that does happen, that's obviously going to change the cuts. The Fed is probably going to cut rates much more aggressively, so that way the economy doesn't decelerate too much in the opposite way. Major theme obviously is AI. People have a whole bunch of range of opinions on this is a boom, this is a bust, we should go all in, we need to hold back. I'm not really going to be talking about any of that. None of that's really going to help your trading. The main thing that I have gathered is that there is a lot of AI demand for things and raw inputs like chip stocks, memory stocks, optical cabling stocks. You see some chemical stocks or industrial stocks for cooling. Energy stocks have rallied. Some real estate stocks have rallied for data center deals. Oracle reported a whole bunch of high backlogs. So there's a lot of demand here. There's obviously huge CapEx spend for a lot of data centers. So, they're spending a lot of money. And to me, the main question is, hey, is all that spend going to be justified, right? Are the future revenues going to be high enough to justify all that spend now? And when are we going to realize that? I don't have the questions to that. That's just a general high-level overview of market questions. Now, a shorter theme, obviously, is the war in Iran. There's a huge oil shock, given that the Strait of Hormuz is generally closed. There's a couple of ships that are coming in and out. I think China, India, but pretty closed here. There have been some attacks on some refineries and oil fields, not a lot. That's subject to change. But if we do attack, or if those fields are attacked, then that's going to create a much longer term problem for oil, right? Because you're attacking the direct source rather than just the transportation of that oil out through a geographical choke point. So if that happens, then there might be a longer problem. Now, the reason that this is important, obviously, is because that's going to be an upward pressure on inflation. Oil is not just gasoline, but an input for a whole bunch of different products. So as the price of those go up, that's going to push inflation up across the board. And that might change the Fed rate and position, right? So this is all sort of, this AFX, BFX, CFXD sort of deal. And, if those one rate cut switches to no rate cuts, if it goes to one rate hike, maybe, right? If they feel the inflation is going to be very strong, that's going to put a negative pressure on the market. So those are just some themes. Again, I'm not really prognosticating on what's going to happen, how's it going to happen, but, just do some research on your own, ask questions to your LLM, watch some educational videos. Just getting a lay of the land helps just a little bit of the broader team. So that's enough about fundamentals. What we're really looking at here is the technicals. On a technical level here, we have a couple major things. First, we have a breach of all of the SMAs, which is very, very important. And this is coming not on a sharp move, right? It's not like a big drop to the SMAs, but after a period of flat price action, right? If I look at, I actually saw this on a Thursday, right? Or maybe, Thursday or Wednesday over here. If you look at the price at 661-ish, that was the same price SPY was at 918, call it, right? Like 1 month, right? After 1 month, or sorry, 6 months of just zero net movement in SPY, right? So came after a period of flattening, which I view as a shaking out period. Buyers and sellers are in equilibrium, and then this news event pushed the equilibrium to the downside, and these buyers started to get flushed out. Some view this as a buying opportunity. So you can see that this move was choppy as it went down. Right, we got a gap. We had a gap down, rallied back to the 8 and 15. Sellers took another shot. We made a new low and a gap down, rallied back to the 8 and 15. Chop. And we started to move down lower here. Test the low, bounced up again, came back over here. Gap down, test. Gap down, flat, and then we actually sold off later on the end of the day. So choppy move down. It's not something, right? If I look at something like this, right, this is a much more organized break through the SMA. Look how there's not too many overlap in the candles. Mostly a lot of green candles. Mostly a lot of red candles. There's a couple of situations where it's like, okay, look, we gap down, test this over here, and then the next day we continue it back lower. So these kind of real green solos, right? One candle here, gobbled up. One candle here, gobbled up. One candle here, gobbled up. Flat for a little while, and then we get the bounce. And we were able to short on that bounce. Now, if you just contrast that move with this move over here, you can see that it's much choppier, much more of a wide channel, and we might have even broken that channel. If I were to just put a parallel channel, something like that, right? Maybe something like this. This could be a selling climax that we see on Friday. You know, it goes to show. So, what are the scenarios that can happen, right? So, in my mind, I have 3 scenarios, and I'm going to put them in order of likelihood. So, to me, the most likely scenario right now is a sharp reversal through the SMA. So I think we get to the point where we hit some sort of selling climax. It looks really spooky. It looks like we're about to crack down, going to go lower. We're going to test, 630, right? Like we're another day away from 640. We're not too far away from that. It's going to look spooky. Maybe we spend 1 or 2 or 3 days below the SMA, and then boom, we snap back really, really hard. And it might be a big bullish candle here. Let me see if I can find some examples from the past. Something like this, right, where it's like, boom, we just kind of claw back over here. We erase this in a couple of days. We have this where we get down over here, big bullish hammer over here, maybe big bullish hammer, something like that. So maybe we can find some from 2023, 2024, something like that. And if I go all the way back to 2022, I know I'm kind of going a little bit all over the place here, but you can see here, big bullish engulfing candle, right? This is off of some CPI news. I believe that came out on the 13th. So basically, I'm looking for something like that, right? Some sort of really strong reaction where we go early in the day and we snap back really hard in the second half of the day. Now, if that happens, here's what I need to see. I need to see the market get through both the 200 SMA, and ideally it gets through the 8 and the 15 EMA. That's been a pretty good line in the sand for this kind of stuff. Now, it does tend to get to the move a little bit later, but you do get some nice amount of confirmation. So that's ideally what I want to see. And then once I have that, I can feel pretty comfortable taking the long side. It'll give some picks on that. I'm giving that a 65% chance. And again, this probably just reflects my what I think the probability is going to be. I don't know if it's actually going to be 65% or not. I think that's just the most likely scenario, given that 1, the move down was pretty weak. 2, we have a potential selling climax on this channel. And then 3, the main impetus for this move is news-based. And that news could linger right now, but in most cases, this sort of news tends to be shorter term rather than longer term in effect. So scenario number 2 is we get a bounce, and it's not a strong bounce, it's kind of a weak bounce, and we kind of chop around the 200 SMA. We're just going back and forth, not really sure, not really there. Maybe the market's kind of waiting for some news to drop potentially on the war, right? Maybe we end up canceling it, which sounds kind of silly to say we're going to cancel a war. We end up saying, or I guess we end up stopping it on our end of the U.S. end. And maybe the market's waiting for that sort of move, and on that move, then it could rally one way or the other. So that's the second one. I give that a 25% chance of a chop here. And the last one is a retest and a strong rejection off the 200 SMA, which I give this the lowest chance. I give this a 15% chance, and the chop scenario I give a 25, or I give about a 20% chance of that. So, we could retest it here and then roll over. The thing is, I just don't see it being as bearish. There has to be, I think, real strong inflation concerns, very, very strong oil shock concerns that would send the market over. That would have to directly affect Fed rhetoric, right? And I think the impetus for that has to be that we're not going to be cutting rates. We are considering pausing or even hiking rates given inflation concerns. I think that is going to create some shock. So that's what I have to see. Given we just had the FOMC meeting, it would probably have to wait until the next FOMC meeting. Or it might change. Maybe some news will change the probabilities of what the Fed's going to say for those meetings. So that's the scenario that I feel is kind of the least likely. So let's go over some picks. Now, in a sort of bullish scenario, right? Let's say we either rally strongly. You could do some premium selling, could do some out of the money short puts, given that premiums are really high from this drop. You could also do some directional trades. So let me give you a couple of picks here on either side, and I'm gonna unhide this here. So let's just get this centered and oriented. All right. So let's do some out of the money short puts. First one I like here is Lunar. So Lunar is just chopping up in this bearish channel. You can see how as SPY has dropped pretty hard, Lunar has been just grinding up slowly. There is some resistance around $22, so that's something to keep an eye on. But to me, I like the selling the $13 puts out of the money. If you can get them for, 25 to 30 cents, I really like that trade. And I'll flash this up. I'll flash this up on the screen here. Put my OSB here. So I'll pause this here. You can take a screenshot of these picks if you want. My short put picks, some directional picks that you can take shares or puts or a CDS on, or some bearish directional picks where you can do the same amount. So I'll pause that and take a screenshot. Okay. So that's the first one, Lunar. Second one that I like is AAOI. All right, so very, very strong stock, has held up very nicely. It's holding support here at around $84 or so. I like selling even the 60 or the 60. You can even sell the 60 if you want, but the 65 or the 60 puts. And you can get them for a pretty good amount of money over here. I'm going to check them right now. But I sold these yesterday, and so I'm taking some heat on these. But you might be able to get possibly like a 5, 6, 7% return on these. They're really, really nice. So, yeah, you can get them right now for about $277, which is for the 65 puts. Let's assume you're on cash and not on margin over here. But that's about a 4% return on those, which are really, really nice. So AOI is a nice one. The other one that I liked over here was Marvel. Marvel, look at this, held up super well on this day. I like the 80 puts or even the 75 puts on Marvel. And you can get them for pretty nice as well. Let me just look at some chains. Okay, well, can't see the chains for some reason, but last time I saw the Marvel puts, you can get the 70, I think the 70 puts here. Yeah, the 75 puts, you could get them for a 105. They're probably much, you can probably get a better price now, maybe like 120, 135. I mean, if you can get like on the 75 puts $1.50, right, 2% return, that's pretty nice. The 80 puts are also really, really nice. You could probably get them maybe for like a 3% gain, right? So 80 puts, maybe $2.40. That's a pretty nice gain. Just going on cash, not going on Reg T margin right now. If it's Reg T margin, you put up half the strike price. So that means on the 40 puts, on the 80 puts, and you sold them for 240, it'd actually be a 6% return on a Reg T margin. So those are some of those, and a couple of them actually that weren't on the list that I like here. WDC is holding up really well. I'm in the 240 puts short right now on April 17th, going about a month out. Holding up very, very nicely. Held the 8 EMA in the 15. We're testing this all-time high. Very, very strong stock. And what else am I in? Oh, Laser is another very nice one. That stock has held its 8 and 15 EMA, just grinding up extremely strong. I have the 55 puts, which should be right where the 50 SMA is in about a day or two. Below this pivot low over here, we have some horizontal support coming in. Probably around 60 something here, 6150. So Laser is also another nice one that I like. Let's look at some directional picks here. First one is Turn. This one is a pharma stock, I believe, right? I guess it's not going to load. I think this one is a pharma one, so just double check on any pharma stocks for like things like buybacks, clinical trials results. There's kind of always some random stuff going on with this, so just be aware of that for schedule events. But this has been grinding real nicely. It came back, tested support, grinded above this. It's AVWAP from this news, and ever since then just been very nicely grinding up about, I mean, look, from about $40 over here, right, got all the way up to 50 bucks, so 25% up while the market has been down. I will give one oil pick. There's a lot of strong oil stocks, but my favorite is CNQ. I mean, this price action is just really, really strong. I guess it's also a halal symbol. There you go. Look at this. This is beautiful price action. News or no news, it's really, really nice. So definitely something that I would consider trading. Just beautiful, picture perfect, straight line. All the way, honestly, since even before the war, right? It's like before this happened, it was looking very strong. Next one over here, FSLY. After this big, strong move up on news, has been grinding up higher, holding the 8 and 15 EMAs. Very, very strong. Again, just completely ignoring the market. This is one that I really like. Another one here is Sienna. A little bit choppy, but we had this long red candle. Again, just given the context of what happened in SPY. SPY has cracked down through its 200 SMA, testing this AVWAP all the way back from the tariff news. We have this red candle that held the open of this candle and held the 8 EMA, preserved this prior high over here. So did pretty good, and it's been rallying up as the market has been rallying down. Aside of this little dip on this day, kind of rally, there was earnings, and we recovered that earnings gap pretty quickly, and then we continued onwards. Last one here is Rost, grinding up pretty nicely. It's kind of in a range here, pullback, moved up higher, some earnings, pullback over here. It looks like it's holding the gap so far, trying to get through this AVWAP E. Not as strong as some of the other stocks, but I wanted to give a pretty nice pick in a couple of different sectors, right? Turn, CNQ, CN, FSLY, and Rost, all kind of in different industries. I guess CN and FSLY are technically like the tech sector, but kind of different industries. So that way you just have a variety of picks versus me giving you, 5 oil picks that is subject to change on news. On the bear side, first one I like is A. A is Allegiant, I believe. Let's see if it wants to load for me here. Yes, Agilent Technology. This is health technologies. Health tech should not be as newsy as something like a pharma, but again, still check that one. That one is worth checking. Very strong, grindy price action down. Totally ignoring the market. Just had earnings. Very, very strong stuff in this stock. GPC, this one has dropped a lot. Like a lot. There we go. Now, it has dropped a lot where it's like it could be a little bit overextended down here. I wouldn't chase it down here. I'd set some alerts, see if it comes back up to this 8 EMA, or maybe it pauses for a couple of days. You can get a nice entry over here. It was a pretty nice entry on here on 3.9, and then it's been kind of going nice over here. And then as the market fell off, this kind of also tanked off the crater here. So this one is very, very nice. And the last one on the short side I have is Rocket. Rocket Mortgages, Rocket Companies. Again, grinding down lower. This action has been a little bit choppier. You can see it kind of drops, gaps down, and then reverses back up. So you want to kind of get it once it kind of hits this 8 EMA, stalls out a little bit. These are nice entry points right here, here, maybe another one here. That you can get in on some puts. So I like Rocket. This is a pretty nice trade. So those are some of the picks I have for each of your scenarios. On the bearish side, you have 3 picks. On the strong bullish side, you have some directional picks. And if it's kind of like maybe a strong bullish or like we rally, but we kind of chop around the 200 SMA, you can maybe take 1 or 2 short puts if you want, or maybe a PCS or something. So that way you can get some profits, some passive profits while the market kind of does nothing over here. And also as the price action kind of chops around, the IVs are going to collapse, and that will also help in your favor. So that's it for this video. Hope all these picks were helpful. And the game plan was helpful. At the end of the day, I'm just saying, look, first, what's the market doing? What's the scenarios based on the price action generally, and then just taking a little bit of the news into account, because if it's something short term like a shock versus something that's long term, that will dictate what maybe the move is more likely to do, right? Like a one-off thing, if we fall very sharply, we rebound back like the yen carry trade, we were able to continue the trend up. But if it's something like long persistent inflation, like what we saw in 2022, that had a much longer effect on the market, and again, that ultimately reflected in the price action that we saw. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you all in the next video.